some way, shape or form. There's a great piece in The Sun this morning by Douglas Murray. How political correctness on steroids is taking over our lives. Which institution, he asks, can you name in our public life that hasn't gone woke? Can you think of one? The trains are woke, the police are woke. The NHS is woke. The media is woke. The government's bloody woke as well. Everybody's woke. Well, I'm not. I'm unwoke. Let's talk to Helen Dale, who's a writer, she's a lawyer, she's a political commentator. She's going to tell us why the Royal Academy has now apologised to a German artist because they banned her work from the gift shop, because apparently she might have said something a couple of years ago that might have been a bit transphobic. Great. Now, 0344 499 1000. Quite fired up today. I'm glad they've got some wine coming later on because I could do with a drink. This is Talk Radio. We are the home of common sense. We are the independent republic of Mike Graham.
The independent republic of Mike Graham on Talk Radio.
Now, I must apologise in advance to Helen Dale, who's always very polite to me, but I'm feeling a bit annoyed today, Helen, so do forgive me if I get a little bit feisty.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes. See, you've already had a calming effect on me by saying it that way. I've already calmed down. But, you know, I just wanted to get all that off my chest because I don't know if you saw it yesterday, the vaccines, shopping. It was like a QVC for vaccines, you know. We've got the best vaccines in the world. Have you had yours? If you haven't, we can give you one for free. And if you've had not
it's
only
like
one...
an advert for DFS sofas.
It really was.
Yeah, this is the sort of government that wants everybody to go into DFS and somehow manage to purchase a sofa at a higher price.
Yes, and
that's what it is.
But they want you all to go at the same time, and they only want to have one sofa for sale. You don't want to have any choice. That would be bad. You know, it's just extraordinary to me how we've become.
Stopped watching those ministerial announcements. They're just tedious, and I have a day job. I have to get other things read, and other things written, and there is just. Last year when they were first. The various broadcasts and presses and so on and so forth. I mean, I watched quite a few of them at the beginning. Yes. I think everybody did.
Yeah.
And I stopped watching them because after one, and it had droned on for half an hour and given inaccurate information, like so often happened. I just remember sitting there thinking, well, that's half an hour of my life I'm never going to get back again.
Also,
so
I think we also, most of us collectively worked out that it was nothing more really than a propaganda exercise with old Chris Whitty and his next slide, please, without showing all of the graphs.
Yes, haven't they invented pointers?
Oh, God.
I mean, there were, the last time I got in front of, in a lecture hall in anger, well, actually, to do my job, was in 2010 when I was teaching at my old college at Brasenose at Oxford.
Yes.
And even then, there were pointers.
Although
I developed a policy of not using PowerPoint, and because it actually doesn't teach the students. It's better when they engage fully with their tutor or their seminar leader, and that they're actually not that useful. And there's an American statistician who really thinks they're very bad in STEM subjects, and his name is Edward Tufte. And there's a humorous little meme that gets around on the internet that says, every time you use a PowerPoint, Edward Tufte kills a kitten. Because PowerPoint's just useless for actually getting information into kids' heads.
Right. But this is the trouble. We've sort of replaced knowledge and teaching and intelligence with kind of presentation. I mean, if it's anything, this is a government all about presentation. And unfortunately, there's not much substance behind an awful lot of what they're presenting to you. And if you start asking them questions, I mean, for example, I could not believe yesterday, and I know we're not supposed to be talking about this, but I'm on a rant, so here goes. One of the people who was standing up there is an actual GP. The woman, I think it was Nikki somebody or other, standing to Sohawi's left. And not one of the media said to her, don't you think it's a bit ridiculous that nobody can actually get an appointment to see their GP? Which would have been the question I would have asked.
Is that still going on?
Yeah.
I thought that they'd been ordered back to work.
No.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
No, there are still people up and down the country contacting me every single day saying
they can't get an appointment with their GP.
Can't get an appointment. They're not doing things like medicals. I had a guy yesterday call me from Wales, a taxi driver. He needs to get a medical to renew his licence with the council. The council are now threatening to pull his licence because his doctor won't give him a medical.
Oh,
I mean, you know, it's madness. Anyway, let's talk about the wokists, because the Royal Academy is the latest nonsensical institution to have done something completely ludicrous and then apologised and reversed it.
Yes, I mean the story, the Jess De Wahls story is just completely ridiculous, and the apology, and I called it in my tweet this morning that you retweeted a not apology. It's one of those documents, and I can have a pretty fair guess at what has happened here. That's been written by their corporate communications person,
Yes.
and it undoubtedly included awful words like learnings and journey,
yes.
and office speak. You know, like it's David Brent is running the country and writing everybody's press releases for them, but because they put themselves in a slightly awkward legal position as well, because we've now got the Forstatter ruling with the tax policy specialist, her views, which had extraordinarily been described as unworthy of respect in a democratic society. The court, the appellate tribunal, overturned that and said no, when they're talking about views unworthy of respect in a democratic society, they're talking about Nazism or communism or Islamism or other forms of totalitarianism. So, and now we know that that is the case. That is the law of the land. That's the way the system works, the doctrine of precedent. So what has happened? It's also been legaled to death. And one of the effects of that, and I say that as the person who has been the lawyer in some instances that's drafted these documents or been given something from communications to edit to make it sure it's in compliance with the legal ruling. And it just drains the life out of prose.
It does.
It becomes
it's
impossible
depressing
to say anything meaningful.
Yes. And it also then, by its very nature, sounds insincere anyway, doesn't it?
Yes, that's how you finish up with this whole not-pology phenomenon. And that is compounded again by the advice from the Free Speech Union, from Toby Young, but other people at the Free Speech Union, that it is generally in these debates very unwise to apologise. We have lost the ability to accept a sincere apology with good grace, even when that apology is obviously designed, and this is the legal phrase, to mitigate your loss in the event that there is some form of litigation.
We did say sorry
later on, because so you've got this situation where words fall like soft petals, and it flowers from a dying tree, and so you've got this situation where everything comes across as padded, as insincere, and as meaningless. And then at the same time, because it's obviously a climb down, everyone can see it's a climb down. This was ridiculous behavior. Taking this woman's she does embroidery and tapestry. I mean, I finished up, of course, like everybody else in the country, finding her website, this Jess De Wahls, and her artwork is glorious. And on Talk Radio TV, the stations put up a picture of one of her pieces. That looks like a painting. It's not. It's needlepoint.
Right. I mean, that's not the kind of
stitching. It's incredibly skillful.
It really is, and that's not the kind of needlepoint I used to do at school. I can tell you. I mean,
gosh, no.
I think they managed to get me to write my name once. That was about as far as we got, with a book on a bookmark.
It's so this is someone with real ability. And then I saw, and so of course it's obviously a climb down. You've got the legal to death not apology, and then of course the people who perceive they've been defeated, the trans activists.
Yes,
they're like the critical race theory people, the Black Lives Matter people who have a go at someone like Calvin Robinson, who you've also had on the Independent.
Absolutely.
Republic.
No, listen, we've got these kind of we've got these
their
gangs
rights to abuse people.
Right. We've got these gangs of sort of social media angry people who pile on anybody who says something that they don't like. And the trans lobby's got them. The Scott Nats have got them with the cyber Nats.
Cyber Nats.
We've got, as you said, the critical race crowd. We've got cyclists, vegans. There's always a group, and they're always as angry as each other all the time, and they always want somebody cancelled.
And the thing you get with this is they perceive, because they're on the right side of history, this is the standard line and it's the current year, they perceive that they can say all the things that have been socially unacceptable to say for probably 20 years. So I noticed yesterday a significant amount of abuse being directed at Jess De Wahls because she's German. calling her a kraut and things that I'm not going to repeat because this is before the watershed and it's a family radio station.
These are the kind people, aren't they? Again.
Oh yes, all the people with "be kind" hashtags, and seriously, sounding like an extra in Dad's army.
Yeah. Yeah.
With and my comment was, and all of these people, their continuity remain. Have they decided that it's all right to abuse Germans now?
Oh yeah, that's fine. As long as they pick the right subject because you've said the wrong thing, you're the wrong kind of artist. Because normally speaking, they'd be in support of artists, because artists notoriously would consider themselves to be left-wing, generally speaking. And so then most of them are okay. But suddenly if somebody says something they don't agree with, it's like they've become the devil incarnate. It's quite remarkable.
And even worse, I mean, being called a kraut is kind of neither here nor there. It's like I've been called lots and lots of homophobic slurs over the years when I was younger, mainly. I mean,
but it's not really, is it? Because I mean, I don't really care what people call me. I don't have any rules at all about that, and I get called all sorts of things, as you can imagine. But what I'm going to say to you is that if there is a standard, if you like, on social media for what you're supposed to do and say, and what you're not supposed to do and say, then surely it has to be fair. It has to be equal.
Well, that's right. A basic rule of law principle is treat like cases alike. And some of the stuff that I have seen tweeted at and even said to Calvin Robinson. Yeah. If I'd have said that as a child, growing up in a very conservative state, Queensland, in the 1970s and 80s, so I'm revealing my age here, with conservative parents, they were more conservative than me, I'd have been taken into the kitchen and had my mouth washed out with soap. Yeah. I cannot safely repeat some of the things that have been said or most of the things that have been said to Calvin Robinson at the current hour on talk radio, because it's before the watershed. It's so disgusting.
But also, Helen, you wouldn't say them anyway. These are not things that you would say. So the kind of people that say these kinds of horrible things to other people are quite simply disgusting individuals, and they shouldn't be paid any attention to. And the people at the Royal Academy should know better than to react to some kind of Twitter storm from a tweet that was written 2 years ago or more. They should just ignore it, shouldn't they?
Well, this is the other thing, is I'm convinced that a lot of these people who demand trigger warnings and say that their feelings are going to be hurt and so on and so forth, my basic assumption is that they're lying. And the reason that I think that they're lying is because they must go around on the internet and search for something to be offended by, whether it's Jess De Wahls' comments from a couple of years ago, whether it's Ollie Robinson's tweets from a decade ago, whether it's Ross Peltier's tweets also from a decade ago. And this shows you that in terms of the victimhood Olympics, trans people are clearly at the top of it, because Ross Peltier's comments, Ross is black, and the Greens had to withdraw him as a candidate in the Batley and Spen by-election because of decade-old tweets. And the man is of Jamaican background. Many Jamaicans are conservative religious people. That's probably what he believed when he plays for Jamaica, when he was young. Yeah. And so he's not being allowed to grow.
No. And that's the thing, free speech, for example, and of course free speech has consequences, but if you have a religious belief, which you believe intensely and you believe very strongly, why should you not be able to say things which your religion would teach you? Because I don't see why that would offend anyone.
Well, this is another problem you've got, where you've got people's religious arguments are construed as offensive, and then people criticize the religion. But then you get religious people, and particularly Muslims, they are the worst offenders. We've all seen it with the Batley and Spen grammar school incident, where they're very good at dishing it out and very bad at taking it. And they say, well, you're criticizing Islam, and they try to construe it as if you're criticizing individual Muslims. And the thing is, the hypocrisy and double standards is just extraordinary.
Meanwhile,
and you've got this capture of quangos, and my view always used to be this institutional capture of quangos, that what happens when wokies take them over is they finish up wearing the organisation, the institution, like a skin suit, but it's been hollowed out inside and doesn't stand for anything anymore. And there are two ways to respond to this. You either just scrap the whole idea of quangos and giving state money to any kind of charitable organisation. The whole point of a charity is it's meant to be the private sector. Or the alternative, which seems to be what the Conservatives are trying to do now, although they're very late to the game and should have been doing it for a decade, is to do the long march, to do their own version of the long march through the institutions and just appoint Tories to the Quango boards. But it would be nice to be able to say, no, you shouldn't have these idiot organisations like SAGE and Public Health England or a major charity like Stonewall finishing up dependent on taxpayers' money because it's mainly government bodies that are paying them for their scheme.
And that is the basic problem. Stay with us, Helen, for a moment. We've got to take a little short break. We will be back with Helen Dale, writer, lawyer, political commentator, of course, as well. She wants to say a few things about Brexit as well. We'll take your calls too, though. Don't forget, we are the home of common sense, and you have to give us some of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Talk Radio.
This is Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app.
The Independent Republic of Mike Graham. on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the Independent Republican, Mike Graham, right here on Talk Radio. We're talking to Helen Dale, writer, lawyer, political commentator, of course, as well. Helen, you wanted to talk a little bit about Brexit, the 5th anniversary of such?
Well, Brexit did a very unusual thing to me for the very simple reason that I actually voted from Australia in 2016 while I was working for an Australian politician. And to give you a sense of how much time has passed, that Australian politician I was working for, his name was Senator David Leyonhjelm. He's no longer a senator because he actually retired in 2019. So he's not even in the parliament anymore. I was working for him on his re-election campaign in 2016, and he was re-elected, which was fine. That was good. I got to come back to the UK, but I had no sense because I had to cast a postal ballot, and the UK wasn't as well set up for getting hold of postal ballots as Australia is. Australia is very, very efficient on this kind of thing because of the desire to get as many people as possible to vote.
Yes. Is it also to do with the distances that people might live away,
yes,
far away?
Yes, the culture has become much more used to dealing with big distances with votes.
Right.
And so I popped my ballot into the post box and didn't really think very much more of it. And here I am. Well, I was sitting yesterday thinking, I've written approximately, probably give or take 10,000 words. I've written about 100,000 words on Brexit for multiple outlets all over the world. And I put up a link to the best, in my view, of the unpaywalled ones. It's unfair to expect people to subscribe to The Australian or The Spectator or The Wall Street Journal, to this organisation, to Law and Liberty. I've done a lot of Brexit commentary for them, and it was basically me explaining Brexit to Americans. Law and Liberty is an American legal professional sort of magazine. And I just did not expect that this would happen. And the extraordinary scenes, and I actually did that thing of being a journalist, you go back and read what you wrote, and it's what you think at the time is preserved in aspect. I've either printed it out or I've got a digital record. Yeah. And the extraordinary behaviour in the Commons before the general election in December 2019, I went back and I just reread some of it, and I was reminded of Bercow, of course. It was impossible not to be reminded of John Bercow and his extraordinary behaviour. And now I notice even Labour has ruled out trying to get him a peerage because they realise.
Well, I mean, don't worry, he'll try the Lib Dems next.
Oh, good grief!
You know, he's got no shame, that man.
Yes, shamelessness. That was the thing that struck me. And of course, going back, I found a lot of not just continuity Remain, but even some wider Remainer people being sort of in love with John Bercow. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there thinking, you really actually don't care about the thing that you purport to care about. No. You don't actually care about parliamentary scrutiny, and you don't actually care about democracy either. You pretend to be democratic. And the whole thing turns into that awful joke about the Lib Dems. They're neither liberal nor democratic anymore, hence Prosecco Party. Yeah. And I was quite stunned looking back over that period. And Robert Toombs, the very fine Cambridge historian, made the point yesterday that COVID has sort of obliterated all of this and we've forgotten it all. And the other thing is...
I spent too many hours down there on College Green in a tent interviewing them.
Yes. Well, this is the thing. I got that way that I was getting the Brexit blues. And I did constitutional law like every lawyer does. I was taught by a very fine scholar of it, Professor Vernon Bogdanor. I finished up reviewing one of his books. That was part of the 100,000 words on Brexit that I wrote in 5 years. And even for me, it started to pall. I was getting the Brexit blues, I call it. I am running out of useful things to say about this.
Well, I remember very well in that sort of final week of stalemate before the election was called, and John Rentoul came to talk to me, and I remember sitting with him in the tent, and he sat down as the first guest, and I actually said to him, do you know, I've run out of things to ask you. I literally had nothing to ask him because we'd done it all. We'd done all of it. There was nothing left.
There was for a while there at precisely this point where lots of people who are interested in constitutionalism and parliamentary procedure and all the reasons I was asked to write about Brexit for, basically, taught by Vernon Bogdanor, have a law degree from Oxford, that kind of thing, knowledge of the workings of parliamentary procedure in two different systems. Australia, obviously, you've got Odgers Senate rules in Australia, the same way that you've got Erskine May over here for the Commons. And so all the things that I was interested in, you know, where I'd actually worked and been paid extremely well to provide legal advice to a parliamentarian on this stuff, I was actually getting sick of my own job as a legal commentator.
I think we all were.
I never thought that would happen. I honestly never thought it would happen. And there was this little Twitter hashtag that I actually put it up at one point because I was so sick of it, called Board of Brexit Pass the Deal.
Yeah. No,
and
exactly.
you might remember it. And I can completely understand why other people were getting it as well.
Yeah.
And now it's been sort of overwhelmed by COVID and entrenched. The actual decisions that were made have been entrenched by the vaccine rollout, which the European Union is still doing extremely shambolically, although it is better than it was. And it's still having consequences too. I mean, Australia's vaccine rollout was delayed and is still delayed because of export controls from the European Union.
No, I know. No, listen, we all got thoroughly tired of it. But sometimes I now harken back to those days because at least we could do a lot more. We've got to run, Helen, because we're running late already for the news. Thank you very much indeed. Helen Dale, writer, lawyer, political commentator. Bored of Brexit? You thought you might be. How about bored of COVID? How about bored of vaccines? How about bored of lockdown? Let's get some news headlines.